Geek. Talking baseball every week. Cause they're Gleeman and the Geek.
And welcome to Gleeman and the Geek, Yankee Killer edition.
Yeah, we have a rule. That's John Bonus of Twins Daily. I'm Aaron Gleeman of The Athletic. We have a rule that anytime the Twins score 9 runs in the first inning at Yankee Stadium, we do a podcast the next morning.
That's exactly right.
Been a
That's
rule
what it's worked. Yep.
For 10 years.
Yep.
And finally we get to enact it.
That's in the bylaws.
Yeah, that was the first rule we came up with. I said, John, have you ever heard of a podcast? Yeah. Do you want to do one? Maybe. Here's the one rule.
Did you see how many different tweets we got about saying it's an emergency? Like
Yeah.
they want to hear it's an emergency
We would have.
podcast.
We had this one scheduled already.
This one's scheduled as the free one. So
I don't want to pull back the curtain too much on our...
So if you are not a subscriber to our Patreon and you love listening to people talk about the Twins after big wins or big games or something like that, I would suggest you maybe subscribe to the Patreon. You're going to get a taste of it today because we're going to talk a lot about that.
I can already tell this is one of those John runs out of breath with every sentence episodes where he's all excited. I
got my caffeine in my hand.
Yeah, but you gave me the one who usually needs the caffeine. You gave me a caffeine free.
Oh, is AEW root beer caffeine free?
Well, the weird one you guys buy. You guys buy all kinds of weird. I think we record at John's house 90-something% of the time now.
Right.
And we're in the little conference room here nice little conference room here in the lobby of his building. And my only real rule for John is I'll drive to you and, you just set up the mics, but you got to bring me something to drink.
Yeah.
And it could be water.
Yes.
Like I don't need it for the nutrients. I need it for like the lubrication. That sounds gross. I realize. Sorry. But he brings me like increasingly strange things. Like he'll bring me like a orange soda with no caffeine and sugar or a tiny A&W root beer can, those little cans with no caffeine. And
I like you to feel like a big guy.
I think you guys are like, yeah. I feel like Shaquille O'Neal with my hand. Anyway, lots to talk about. Not only pretty good White Sox series, too. Mm-hmm. Followed by, we're recording this on...
I don't think we've... No, we did. I was going to say...
We did one after the first White Sox game, I think.
No, the last free one we did was Monday morning.
Yeah,
but it was before the
we
first
exist
White Sox
beyond
game.
this.
I was going to say
free
we
podcast.
Sense, but we did have one loss. Since the
we
last
should also say
podcasts.
we're going to talk a lot about the Yankees game and the White Sox series. But before that, I just wanted to say we're now, we did the opening week was kind of not normal, obviously, in terms of scheduling and all that. And then we did the 2 KFAN live shows that we turned into podcasts. So we were kind of thrown off of our normal, but we're back in a podcasting groove.
We're into the cadence.
Yeah, whatever that means. We're back in the pocket. We're standing in the pocket here, which means the show you're listening to right now, which we call the free show.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know. We need a better name for it, but it's the free show. Whatever.
We call one the free show, the other one the Patreon show.
Yeah. Well, that's pretty self-explanatory.
I guess.
I mean, why?
Okay.
That'll be this time every week, going into the weekend, kind of.
Generally, yeah.
And then we will come back almost every Monday, if not before then, if something happens. But almost every Monday morning with a recap for the Patreon subscribers, which is Patreon, patreon.com/Gleeman. The Patreon supporters will get an episode Monday morning to recap the weekend.
Right. Deep
dives and stuff like that. And then we'll do either usually Wednesday or Thursday for the Patreon folks, a mailbag episode and or any news that happens, any interesting games we'll break down, or guests. That midweek one kind of fluctuates a little bit. But so yeah, if you're looking at the team with the second best record in baseball at the time of this recording, it does feel a little weird. You should sign up for the Patreon because there's going to be more. But it does feel a little weird. Like I said, they took 2 out of 3 from the White Sox. They're 8-4. They go to Yankee Stadium, which is a house of horrors. They score 9 first-inning runs. Incredible.
Right.
They go on to win. It was 11-2 was the final, I think. And we're recording now early Friday morning. They still have 3 games to play as we speak at Yankee Stadium.
Right.
It does feel to me almost like like I want to be like very careful with what we say because I almost feel like the baseball gods will be like to get too excited when half of the people listening to this will not even listen to it until they've played multiple more games of this Yankees series.
True.
And so it's like, what are they talking? They're excited. They lost 22-3 in game 2. And then it's like, so we'll see how that goes. But there's still plenty to talk about, obviously. A lot of roster moves, some shuffling of the rotation that we're going to talk about.
Yep.
I saw a funny tweet from I don't remember, but it was like a Yankees fan. I don't know, the Yankees blogosphere might be a blogger or something like that. And he said, man, I don't like this Twins rebrand. As they were scoring 9 runs in the first, as if to say, like, I liked beating the crap out of them. It's not fun when they. Thought that was pretty funny. So let's see, a couple things. So first of all, you guys can see why Eddie Julien was the talk of spring training.
Yeah.
Why we devoted like 9 podcasts to talking about Ed Julien during spring training. He comes up, debuted at Target Field a couple games ago, batting 8th, moved into the leadoff spot last night at Yankee Stadium. And he had, I think he said 20 or 25 friends and family there from Quebec City and the surrounding areas, which is closer to New York than it is Minnesota. His mom and dad and I think a couple of his coaches made it to Target Field for his actual Major League debut.
Okay. I did not heard that. Okay.
And he told us his parents can't speak a lick of English. And, I mean, we've talked about this. He couldn't speak any English
when he went to
till
Auburn.
4 years ago or 5 years ago. He showed up at Auburn University in Alabama as an 18-year-old or whatever, and he couldn't speak any English. And what a place to learn English. On the baseball team at Auburn University in Alabama.
Yeah, that's right.
And I give him a lot of credit because I've now interviewed him like way too often, probably by his standards,
right.
since spring training. Talked to him a couple times during spring training, talked to him a couple times now. Tremendous interview. Like, I think he's a little sick of talking about himself. He's like that. Like he doesn't quite get the hoopla, but
he definitely gets annoyed by that.
Right.
Yeah,
maybe just from me. But
might be too.
Not only is he a really good talker, you would have no sense whatsoever that English was not his first language. And he's dropping vocabulary words that I would never even drop. I'm an idiot, but still. So yeah, I mean, he's a very interesting guy. And my hope is obviously that he becomes a significant part of this lineup long term, which I think, we're already maybe seeing that take place. We'll see. We're going to talk about that. But I love guys who will talk you through their thought process, their adjustments, their plate approach, that sort of thing. Because there are some hitters who you're like, oh, you've been hitting for more power lately. What's going on? Swinging hard. I don't know. Things are going well. It's like, okay, well, that's fine too. And there are some hitters, like Larnach is like this. He'll be like, oh, well, I put my front toe an inch forward last week, and then I twist my left knee. And it's like, okay, well, let's talk about this.
The Jeffers thing.
And so Julien, I think, is along those lines, which I enjoy that because I like players who are willing to nerd out.
I don't know. When he's talked to me, maybe he's gotten into more detail on some of that stuff. To me, when I talk to him about his hitting, it's always mental approach stuff. It's more like, I'm going to be more aggressive early in the thing. Like he seemed to have sort of just such a good inherent feel for the zone that he doesn't think about.
Right.
He doesn't think about that. He doesn't need to think about that. That's just part of the background now. And he has to consciously think about things like, I want to be real aggressive on these first couple pitches. I want to look for something that I can really hit.
The biggest change for him, and I talked to him last spring when he had a really good year at Single A and was kind of burst onto the prospect scene a little bit, but was still, who knows? This guy was an 18th round pick. He's a French Canadian guy. Right. But he had put up 100 walks and 15 homers and he, 440 on base in the low minors. And I remember talking to him last spring and he wasn't even a roster invite. He wasn't even in Major League camp last spring or on the 40-man roster. And he said what you just said, which is, I know I can draw walks. I know I can grind out at bats. I know I have a great eye at the plate. I've worked all my life. Like he even says like during batting practice, he will take pitches that aren't close to sort of train his eye. And he said what you just said, which is the next step for me is if they want to throw me strikes, especially on fastballs early in counts, I have to be prepared to take damage swings on it, to take big swings. And we've seen that now in the year since then. He had a huge year at Double-A, hit 320 homers, 4-something on base percentage, and then he had a great camp with the Twins. He exited midway through to go play in the WBC for Canada and had a monster half dozen games for Canada with a couple of homers and a bunch of walks. Got back to camp, goes to Triple-A. hit 290 with a 4-something on base percentage in a week or so at AAA, and now he's getting an opportunity well ahead of schedule, certainly. But as we talked about on the Patreon last time, it's the same thing with
That's
Miranda.
the way that works.
It's the same thing with Wallner. It's the same thing with Julien. Very rarely, especially for a hitting prospect, is this thing mapped out to the extent that we like to kind of in our heads map this thing out. Most often it's, well, this guy's ready or close to ready. We'll see what dominoes fall here that opens the door for him. And that's what happened, which is you needed Polanco to be injured at second base, but then you needed Kepler and Gallo to get hurt so that they needed outfield help, which meant Nick Gordon was no longer the biggest pressing need for him was no longer second base. It was outfield depth, in which case you bring up Julien. He starts at second base. He adds a left-handed bat to the leadoff spot, which it fills a bunch of different blanks because we talked a lot about how the leadoff spot for them has been the trickiest place to fill and kind of feel good. I'm not saying he's going to be here for the next 10 years in the leadoff spot now. It's possible he goes back down depending on who's healthy. But I don't know. I mean, even this spring, the way Baldelli especially talked about Julien offensively, there's some questions about him defensively.
I was going to say, he talked about him in two different ways.
Yeah, although last time, 2 days ago when Julien got called up, Baldelli did, praise him quite a bit about the work he put in camp at second base and improved and, he, made a couple nice plays, all that. But he's just in love with the bat, and he talks about him in a way. I mean, they've had some good hitters come up during Baldelli's. Kirilloff and Miranda, but he talks about Julien and basically says there just aren't young hitters who have this disciplined approach with 20 homer power and just the quality of at-bats. And even I saw a quote after last night. I wasn't there, obviously, in New York, but Baldelli said, we threw him in there, Yankee Stadium, leading off, best at-bats on the team in that game. Right. Started it off with a hit, came back in the same inning and hit an opposite field homer.
Right.
And we're off to the races with Ed Julien in the leadoff spot, hopefully. And by the way, you add him to that leadoff spot. Now we'll see. He could slump, whatever. But it really kind of
it does set things up.
The rest of it fills in a lot nicer after him.
When we get to the segment where we talk more about that game, I want to start with the lineup because that's an interesting piece of it. First of all, just a couple of things about Julien. You mentioned 18th round draft pick. We should be a little careful. We should frame that, though, for our listeners as to what that means. So he's an 18th round draft pick. He got first or second round signing or second or third round signing most. He got
three times what the slot would have been, or four times what the slot would have been, or something.
Yeah, I think. I don't know exactly how low that slot is, but I think as I recall, he got quite a bit more money than this.
The slot for 18th, there is no slot, but it's 120 grand or something capped normally for whatever. But yes, he was an 18th round pick before Seth emails us angrily about this. But to say
Seth will also tell you why he fell, and I can't remember why he fell. There was some concern about him as well that was going in. I can't remember if it was an injury, something or what. But anyway, because of the way Major League Baseball draft works, you get this pool of money, and if you don't spend that pool early on, what it allows you to do is sort of fish in the late rounds.
Yeah,
where
you can lure a person who is demanding, like you said, third round money,
right?
But doesn't get picked in the third round because there's some uncertainty about whether they'll sign or an injury situation or whatever.
And therefore, they can re-enter the draft the following year.
Right, they have leverage.
Right, so a lot of times they'll just say, well, don't draft me if you're not going to get me by the end of the third round. I want third round money. You can't sign me. Don't do it. Right. But they had saved enough money early on that when they were able to grab him in the 8th. I mean, at that point, it doesn't matter whether you grab him in the 6th or the 18th.
Anything after the 10th round, I think, is the same rules, basically, for signing bonus.
And so, he was a more highly regarded draft pick than the 18th round, is what guess I'm kind of saying, right?
There were 400 and something picks made before he was taken.
Right, yes, exactly right.
But you're 100% right, and that's why anytime the draft comes up, I remember talking about this, about Royce Lewis at the time, which is, it's not when you hear, the Twins took, let's just use the 2017 draft, the Twins took Royce Lewis number 1, and he signed for, I don't know what it was, $1 million under the recommended slot.
Right. And
everyone sees that and goes, the cheap pull, ads, blah, blah, blah. Right. No. Well, everyone.
They're going to spend that $1 million.
You spend 100% or slightly more than your allotted signing bonus pool. But to your point, it doesn't have to go A, B, C, D. You can mix it up. If you save $1 million on Royce Lewis, which they did, you can then use it on your third round pick, who maybe had first round talent and told people, don't draft me unless you're going to give me first round money. That's how they ended up getting Blaine Enlow.
Yes.
Which, he's been injured and everything. But
by the way, he's had a pretty good start at Double-A, though.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I think he was minor league pitcher of the week or something.
Giving them an extra $1 million in 2017 hasn't really paid off.
It's similar to, you can't trade Major League Baseball draft picks, so you can NFL draft picks, but it ends up being sort of the same effect as if you said, okay, instead of having the number 3 overall pick, we're going to take the number 5 overall pick, but then we get another pick at number.
It's like trading down
4th round pick
for additional picks.
That's right.
Yes. The Astros did that with Carlos Correa and
they did.
ended up with Lance McCullers as their second round pick.
Yes, right.
And they had extra money to sign him. So just on Julien in general, I think the way he technically came up to replace Gallo, who went on the IL, which we can talk about in a minute. Kepler's also on the IL. It sounds like Kepler could be back during this Yankees series, either tomorrow or Sunday. I think. Well,
originally the plan was, that he would be eligible tomorrow, right?
Yeah. When that happens, my assumption is Wallner will go down because Wallner hasn't even started the last 2 games.
Yeah, Julien has essentially replaced Wallner.
Well, yeah,
since Julien's been called up, Wallner's been on the bench.
Except they don't play the same position.
No, I know, but
Wallner wasn't going to play second
base. In terms of spots in the lineup, because we talked a little bit about this Wednesday morning. We were kind of wondering, Julien, if he plays second base, it's not ideal. You'd almost prefer he plays first base or DH in this particular. Except you've got a full time DH. You've got to start moving people around. Like either you're moving Nick Gordon to center field and benching Taylor. Well, you don't want to bench Taylor right now. He's on fire, and so the odd person out both on Wednesday afternoon and on Thursday night has been Wallner.
Right. Which is fine. He doesn't have a hit yet since coming up. He's got on base 3 times, but no hit. Right. He came in to the blowout yesterday just to get a few innings or whatever. Yeah. But by moving Gordon from being a primary second baseman to being an outfielder, that also pushes Wallner out of the mix a little bit, like you said. But so my assumption is Kepler comes back sometime over the next 72 hours, let's say. Wallner will go down. And then, I do think it sounds like Gallo is going to come back. He certainly, when we talked to him 2 days ago, said, I don't know that he felt he needed the injured list stint to begin with, but he said it'll be a minimum stay, obviously. Right. But then the question, that is the point where you have a decision to make. Because then it's like, okay, well, do you undo the transaction then, which is you activate Gallo and you send down Julien, who was called up for Gallo. Right. But if Julien has another game or 2 like this in the meantime, or even just, holds his own here for the next 3 games or whatever, I don't know that you necessarily want to do that because you can use Gallo at first base and use Julien at second still. You
might have a decision even before that, though, because now that if you activate Kepler, who's sitting? Because you've got Kepler taking one of those corner outfield spots. Wallner's the one who sent down. Wallner wasn't in the lineup to begin with. Who is Kepler replacing in this lineup?
Well, probably the guy hitting 0.77, Nick Gordon. Nick Gordon take a day or 2 off. I'm a believer in Nick Gordon, but he hasn't played well. And if he's mostly playing corner outfield, he's going to have to hit at that point. And I think the other move that was made was Kyle Farmer, who I'm sure everyone saw the video or were watching, got hit in the face in the last White Sox game 2 days ago by a 92-mile-an-hour Lucas Giolito fastball. And I was sitting in the press box, which is, I don't know, a couple hundred feet away, whatever it is. And the sound of it, because we're like behind home plate, the sound of it convinced me that it hit all helmet. And so in the moment, it made such a sound that I thought, oh, well, at least it hit 100% helmet and 0% head.
Yes.
It turns out it hit 0% helmet and 100%, which is so
bad.
Oh my God. If I would have known that when I heard the sound, I might have thrown up. I
was directly above you.
Yeah. I honestly have been thinking, like it's been going through my head, like the sound.
Okay.
Just like I've been, I'm not usually like that. He was hit essentially in the mouth.
Right.
Went immediately down. Obviously the fear there is, fractured skull, fractured jaw. It can be bad. It can
be bleeding in the brain.
Right. Yeah, right. He was immediately taken to the hospital. the diagnosis was relatively good. I mean, given the circumstances, like Baldelli even said, thank God it wasn't as bad as we expected, but I mean, it's still bad. The bottom 4 teeth were displaced is how they're calling it, which means the ball basically pushed him to a place they shouldn't be.
It's a hockey injury.
Yeah. So he had to have surgery to kind of realign his bottom teeth. Yeah. And then he had a huge laceration from that and from just the impact on his jaw, which he had to have surgery, facial surgery for that. I mean, it's going to be a long road back for Kyle Farmer. However, within that, you know, they said yesterday he's been texting and he seems in relatively good spirits and all that. It's going to, I mean, like, there is no timetable for return here. And the unfortunate thing is, even if he can get physically healthy, it might take months. Who knows? Like, I don't even really want to speculate on that. There's going to be a sort of fear component here.
Yeah,
I mean, which would be natural.
Right.
I mean, by the way, Giolito might have that on the other side the next time he takes the mound.
He was absolutely shaken after that.
Giolito, who's pretty widely known as a good dude, like very obviously was not anywhere intentional. But and so I just wonder. Because I don't know, I've mentioned it. Like when I was playing Little League when I was like 14.
His immediate reaction, you knew it wasn't intentional.
Yes.
Right, yeah.
When I was playing Little League when I was like 14, a guy threw way behind me. And this is, you know, when they're throwing 70-something. And I just instinctively jumped back out of the box right into the ball. And it hit me flush on the forehead. And I woke up laying on the plate and there was like a doctor giving me a concussion test with a little flashlight. Right. And I didn't even remember. I'm like, what is happening? And here's, by the way, how bad parenting was back in the 90s.
You finished playing.
Stayed in the game. They moved me. Here's what they did. They moved me from third base to first base. Was the only thing they did, which I would argue was worse.
Yeah, I would too.
I just remember sitting in the dugout and they put like a cold towel around me and my head was sore. Like it was physically sore. And the guy's like, hey, we're going to have so-and-so play third. You'll play first just so you don't have to move around as much. And I was like, okay. And then I woke up the next morning and I had like a egg the size of a dinosaur egg under my head. Anyway, but yes, 14-year-old me, you know, I took a game or two off, went back, and I was like scared S-less because I was like, how often is this going to happen? You know, I'm going to guess Kyle Farmer's a little tougher than me then or now. But I worry about that aspect too. He was, you know, with Correa back, obviously, after missing a few games, the hope is Correa's minor back problems are done, and he'll essentially play every day here. Right. So Farmer as the backup shortstop hopefully won't be needed, but you never know. But he had just already kind of become, because he came from Cincinnati where he played with Mahle and Sonny Gray and Donovan Solano, and he was the media good guy in Cincinnati. He was a very leadership role in Cincinnati. He had already taken on a pretty prominent clubhouse role. Like he was a very well-liked already. Sure. And just talking to him, it's easy to see why. Right. And so I feel like this just is really, you know, you don't want to see this happen to anyone, very obviously. But yeah, it is I don't know. I feel for him. It's one of the bad parts of baseball is that a couple times a season this happens to somebody and it's not anybody's fault and it's not on purpose and there's no, you know, moral aspect of it. It's just everyone just goes, God, that sucks. And Baldelli said, and actually I thought Ryan Jeffers had the best quote afterward. He said, you see that happen and you just go, how quickly can we go home? Like, how do we end this? Right. Like, how do we, like, we might as well win the game because we're going to feel stupid if we lose this game and then he's injured. Right. But, like, who cares about the game? How do we get out of here? Right. And so, I don't know. It was, everybody was shaken up and, you know, roster-wise, all of a sudden now Willie Castro and Nick Gordon are your backup shortstops. Right. They called up Kyle Garlick as the actual roster move for Kyle Farmer to replace him on the roster.
That might be a move that they reverse too if Kepler and or Gallo come back. Right.
Potentially.
Yeah, yeah.
It just, you know, I think they're going to probably start Garlick tonight against Nestor.
Yeah, I would think so.
And then I don't know the next time they face a lefty.
Maybe he's the lefty that goes back. I mean, I would think that if Kepler comes, I would think if Kepler, the other one Gallo come back, they'll get rid.
You're like my grandma now. The other one. Who's the other one? The other kid.
Come back. They'll get rid of the other left-handed hitter they have on there before they get rid of the right-handed hitter. But yeah, They'll send garlic down before they send down Walner. Is what I'm saying. And they'll send down Walner before they send down garlic.
You got there.
Yeah,
you
got struggling through it.
Oh,
yeah.
I give John these looks like, buddy, you're on your own for this one.
But the second one, I would think it would be garlic. That would be the second one.
Yeah. I'm trying to think. Yeah, it could be. I mean, because you need. It depends if they're comfortable with Gordon as a backup shortstop. You could send down Willie Castro, but what has Willie Castro done negatively from spring training? Nothing really.
Well, I mean, he just. Garlic ain't jumping in at backup shortstop.
No, but I'm saying if you're not using Gordon in the outfield,
right,
Gordon could be the backup shortstop. Okay, before we get to a few, we're going to talk Louie Varland. We're going to talk some other things too.
Yeah.
Let's hit our first sponsors here, which is one of them's Forgotten Star Brewing, which John did an event there a couple weeks ago for opening day.
Yeah, it was huge.
It went well.
They took care of 325 people, so they'll absolutely take care of you. And in fact, this upcoming week, they have a very special event. It's their first annual ever charity week at the brewery. So basically, if you go there Monday through Sunday, from the 17th to the 23rd, each day they're featuring a different charity, neighborhood group, or nonprofit in the tap room. On top of that, they're donating $1 from every pint sold during that week to these charities. So I'm going to read what they wanted me to spend the minute on is reading about the charities quick. So that's what we're going to do. Monday, Infinite Ingredient, a local group works to create better access for mental health care for craft beverage employees. Tuesday, Second Harvest Heartland, local community food bank. Wednesday, Outfront Minnesota is the state largest LGBTQ civil rights group. Thursday, it's the Fridley Schools, unveiling a community donation box in the tap room for the Fridley High School students in need. Urban Ventures on Friday. Urban Ventures provides cradle-to-career support for youth and families in one of Minneapolis' most under-resourced neighborhoods. Friends of the Mississippi on Saturday. They work to help care for one of the state's greatest natural resources in our backyards. And finally on Sunday, which is also, by the way, their Sunday night baseball happy hour we talked about last time, it is the Northern Suburban Center for the Arts. It's a local nonprofit art center that provides a gallery, classes, and more to the Fridley community. So
surely one of those
right
is up your alley,
right,
to support well drinking.
Yeah, drink and do some good.
So yeah, Forgotten Star Brewing, one of our favorite spots. They're East River Road and 49th. It's technically Fridley, but it's like 12 minutes from downtown or whatever.
Right. Yes.
Yeah, check them out. Forgotten Star Brewing. Drink some beer. Feel good that your money's going to charity.
Twins will have a long, kind of a long road trip here, but then they got a long homestand right afterwards, and you're going to want to be wearing some soda stick gear to Target Field, and they've got a brand new one. It's called the Ball Machine shirt. Would you like to describe it for me?
Yes, there's an infamous picture from the 80s, maybe the early 90s, probably early 90s, of a Zubaz wearing Tom Kelly
smoking
a heater in the Metrodome indoors, and he's feeding a ball into the pitching machine. Pregame batting, who knows what it was, pregame batting practice, whatever. And it is like the essence of Tom Kelly, basically, which is like he looks a mess, but also he's a manager who's feeding the pitching machine, which is not something you see a lot because he's the guy who's has his finger on everything.
So that's available right now.
It's a famous shirt,
yes.
and so they've sort of reenacted the shirt a little bit, or the picture.
Right.
They've turned it into a shirt, which you can get at sodastickco.com, and if you do, you can use the promo code Gleeman, and you get, what do you get? 15% off.
That's right.
Which is pretty good. So yeah, go check out Soda Stick. That shirt's new, and then they also just have a lot of good Twins and general Minnesota sports shirts. Soda Stick. Right. Okay. Let's see. I guess let's talk a little bit about rotation, and we'll get into the Varland thing, which was interesting last night. They 7 more good innings from Joe Ryan in a blowout. And by the way, when they scored 9 in the first, I thought to myself, well, okay, Joe, as long as you don't die on the mound and go 5, you're getting a win here. And I also thought, well, this is going to be a chance for them to pull him early after 5 probably, go to Cole Sands for a 3 or 4 out or 3 or 4 inning save, because that's the save rule is silly. Instead, they let Joe Ryan go 7 because he was cruising.
I actually thought the opposite. I thought this was a chance for him to throw a no-hitter or a complete game because just pump him over the plate. And he certainly took that. He took that philosophy. He was throwing strikes. He threw a lot of strikes into using that fastball.
So he goes 7, and then Cole Sands finished it off. I'm assuming Cole Sands will be sent down today, but again, you guys are going to be listening to this after that move is probably made. So we're not going to speculate too much. But it was the fourth time this season that a Twins starting pitcher struck out 10 or more batters, which is more times than that happened all of last season. It's happened 4 times in 13 games. It happened 3 times in 162 games last year. We've talked so much about how different the Twins' rotation has been so far this year, not only in terms of quality, but in terms of quantity. That stat obviously kind of displays that.
Right. Yes.
They're getting not only 6 or 7 innings from these guys, but they're getting dominant outings, high strikeout totals, a lot of missed bats, a lot of swings and misses. They continue to lead the majors in innings per start. They're almost a half an inning per start above the number 2 team in that regard. Like they're like lapping the field in that, and I would not have believed that at any point in the last 40 years.
And it's not like they've been having. I mean, they had an easy first couple of series, but since then it's been Houston and the White Sox and now the Yankees. This is right.
Yeah, this is the meat of a schedule, certainly. A couple notes within that. Sonny Gray threw 5 shutout against the White Sox and left with, 70-something pitches, 75 pitches roughly. Yeah. And it was like, oh, that's kind of strange. It's more like a last year start for Sonny Gray, but it turned out afterward he was very sick with like an upper respiratory, which Baldelli had some of, and a couple other guys on the team have had. It's been going around the clubhouse, and not only so they knew it was going to be a short start. They were hoping to get 4 or 5 innings out of him, turn it over to the bullpen. Baldelli revealed, also he puked like 10 seconds before the game. Apparently, Pete Mackey, the pitching coach, came up to Baldelli like as they were about to take the field and said, Rocco, Sonny just threw up. And Rocco, this is what he told us. He said, I turned to Pete and I said, what do you want me to do with that information? Like the train has left the station. Basically, he's about to run out to the mound or walk slowly out.
Yeah, we're not bringing Ober up today.
Right. Right. So it's like, well, that's good to know. But
when we were watching that start, we got to that like the 4th and 5th inning watching that, and we were noticing that he was using every second on the pitch clock.
Yeah, he was a little more deliberate,
and we were like,
he was also grunting. To the point that we could hear him in the press box. It was almost like Rich Hale-esque from a few years ago.
So we were like, what's going on with him? Is he just is it the heat or something? Like, what's going on that he's using every second
like
death
that? Was the official word.
And then when he did not come out for the 6th, we were like, well, he must have been struggling with something. And then sure enough, he was
struggling to keep his lunch down is what he was struggling with. As I noted, he threw up and then hurled 5 shutout innings. So that was another. I mean, if that's the thing, like I don't want to say that was a bad start. He threw 5 shutouts, but I mean, like their lesser starts this year, like the worst starts they've had have been they had 3 straight 6-inning 4-run starts for a stretch in there, and it was like they would have killed for those type of starts last season.
I would like to see what the game score was on like the worst start this year compared to like all of last year. How many games they had with that? Right?
What are we? 13 games in. They're 9-4. They lead the majors in innings. I think they're top 5 in ERA. I know they're top 5 in strike. They might be leading the majors in strikeout rate, which is another incredible stat for the Minnesota Twins. They haven't really had a bad start.
No.
Like, you can argue that 6 innings, 4 runs from an ERA standpoint, that's a 6 ERA. But, 6 innings, 4 runs, what you'll get after that mostly from managers and players is, well, they gave us a chance to win.
Right.
There's there's almost like a respect for that type of start, which is like, you clearly didn't have it. Right. And it was, Ryan, Maui, Maeda, I think.
Or you just gave up one big hit, which is what happened in all 3 of those games.
Correct.
Right.
If those are your bad starts, you're going to be a really, really good team. Because, true bad starts are 2 2/3, 8 runs. I mean, bad starts.
Or 9 runs on top of the first inning.
That's what I was just about to say. This poor son of a. I think it was like one of his first starts. He had an 0.90 ERA, coming into the game. I'm assuming that was a limited number of innings. But yeah, he. There were some homers, but there was a lot of just doubles to the gaps.
Well, that's one of the other things I want to talk about with that game was their approach during that game was pretty clearly don't be afraid to hit it to the opposite field.
Right.
Which,
especially Vasquez had a couple nice hits to the opposite field, doubles. Vasquez had like 4 hits, 3 hits.
It sort of reminded me of the Twins of like the 2002 to 2004 era, right? Which, we were fairly critical of the Twins and have been critical of the Twins for emphasizing that sort of go the opposite way too much in this last 2 decades, right?
Because they were doing it in search of singles.
Well, maybe.
I would say this team is doing it in search of, like, Correa's homer was to the opposite field. And a bunch of Miranda's double that scored a couple.
Julian's was to the opposite field.
Well, that's true, too, from the left side. Julian has a lot of – people are going to see this. What you'll notice is he draws a lot of walks. What you'll also notice is he takes a lot of balls to left and left center as a left-handed hitter, which is always interesting. Larnach is the same way. Right. Even Larnach's fly out, which Larnach made 2 of the 3 outs in the first inning, which is always amusing to me. Right. And one was a sac fly that drove in a run, and he hit that like 400 feet to dead center. Yeah. I mean, they were just on everything. Now, they only scored 2 runs after that, but I mean, it's not that you let down, although they did pull their starters, which I thought was smart. Like they pulled Buxton and Correa and one other. Who else did they pull? Anyway. But one more note on the rotation. Pablo Lopez had a brutal first 4 batters against the White Sox, including an error on a play he tried to make on a squibber, which was terrible.
One of the worst
plays. Terrible play. For a guy who's a pretty good athlete, and I was just like, ooh, I bet he hates himself right now.
And it looked like he hated himself for the next 2 batters.
Right. I mean, it was on the verge of falling apart in the first inning.
He faced the exact same situation after 2 batters that he faced after 4 batters, which are runners on second and third and no outs. And by then, he had gathered his composure. By the 4th one, no runs scored on that after that point now.
He limited the first inning damage, which could have been you don't make it out of the first inning easily. Right. He limited it to 2 runs and then retired 23 consecutive batters. Yeah. Basically threw, 7 no-hit innings functionally, or 7 perfect innings or whatever, and did it in a very interesting way, which is he has incorporated a new pitch, which is a sweeper, which is a slider that breaks more horizontally east-west, which is sort of taking over baseball. Joe Ryan has been throwing it. Every team's got a guy or two. Let me put it this way. Any analytically sound team has a guy or two who started throwing this, because what happened is all the pitching coaches and the analytics nerds on these teams figured out that the movement of this pitch is kind of potentially the next frontier in getting swings and misses from hitters. They figured out that if you kind of start a ball inside, let's say righty versus righty, and instead of having that sharp break that a normal slider would have, it's got more of kind of a sweeping effect that it's very hard to put a solid swing on it. And so he had never thrown that pitch till he showed up to Fort Myers, but the Twins were very confident because Pablo Lopez is a very good pitcher, but also super smart and one of these guys who's very curious and very willing to tweak. And not only did he throw it during spring training, his first start, opening day, he threw it like 20 times, got good results. Then his second start, which was in Miami against his old team, he threw it like 30 times out of 85 pitches. This is a new pitch. Then he goes into that White Sox start, and he throws a couple of them, and he thinks, it's just not, I don't have it today, this sweeper. Or they're getting good swings on it.
They're looking for it.
And he said, I'm sure they game plan for it. And then so he said, Vasquez, after the first inning, said, what if we just ditch that? Like, what if we just forget that? Let's revamp the game plan. Fastball, changeup, which is what he's done for years. And I think in a weird way, it kind of helped him.
Them. Yeah.
Because the White Sox continued to go up there looking for this third new pitch, which has a spin to it and a different break to it. And he was just pounding fastballs and changeups. And then he did another smart thing was he's setting down 15 in a row, 18 in a row. And then at the very end, he went back to some of the sweepers and had a decent feel and got some strikes on it. So I don't know. I just continue to be so impressed with Pablo Lopez, which is good because Luis Ariz is hitting approximately 850 for the Marlins. Had that same night that Lopez pitched so well, Luis Ariz hit for the first cycle in Marlins history, and the first opposite field home run
versus the Phillies. By the way, I was getting all kinds of texts from my Phillies friends going, "We're wondering why you traded this guy away."
No, I said to somebody,
and that's from a completely random team.
Well, they're in his division. They're in his division.
Exactly right.
So
that's true. Right.
They're more like, why did you trade this guy? But now we get to the point of the rotation where tonight, there's going to be the first change. So it took 14 games for the first change. They're hopeful that it's going to be a one-day thing, but here's what happened. So Louie Varland was scheduled to start last night, Thursday night, for AAA St. Paul, and was scratched from the lineup like an hour before the game. And I start scrambling, texting sources and saying, is he hurt? Bad weather? What's going on? No, it was 80 and sunny. He's fine. He was actually at the ballpark at one point. It turns out he was a healthy scratch, which then sets the ball in motion, and Dan Hayes is digging into it in New York. It turns out what they ended up doing was Varland left the Saints, flew to New York last night to pitch tonight at Yankee Stadium. They're going to push back Tyler Mahle, who was supposed to pitch tonight, one day, so he'll pitch Saturday.
So he gets an extra day of rest.
Yeah, he gets an extra day of rest, which they've talked about wanting to do with Mahle and Maeda. And then they're just going to skip Kenta Maeda's next start, which was supposed to be Saturday.
Yep.
They're going to not place him on the injured list, for now, at least, let's say. And they're insisting, at least the quotes to the reporters in New York, were it's more overall fatigue as opposed to any elbow soreness or anything like that. And I do think we kind of saw that, the drop-off in sharpness from his first start post-Tommy John, which was the 5th game of the season, to his second start post-Tommy John, which was the 10th game of the season, was big. I mean, he was still reasonably effective. He had one of those 6-inning, 4-run starts that we were just talking about.
Right. And, I mean, most of the damage done on one big hit.
But just a lot fewer swings and misses. The velocity was down a little bit. So, I mean, that's certainly something to keep tabs on. He's 35 years old, and he missed a year and a half with Tommy John. So, the sharpness and the command and the velocity from a start-to-start basis is worth tracking because it's going to fluctuate.
Right.
And it's not surprising that, he is fatigued. He hasn't thrown 6 innings in a start for 2 years, basically. They also talked during spring training and even like 3-4 days ago about trying to find places in the schedule, either through off days where you can push guys back in the rotation, or in a situation like this with, I assumed it would be Bailey Ober, but Varland also works, and Simeon Woods-Richardson might work in this spot too at some point, where they look at the schedule and they go, if we brought a guy up to start tonight, we could push everyone back one, or we could skip Mahle, we could skip Maeda, we could skip whoever, give them basically an extra 5 days off, lessen their overall workload. That's kind of the plan. And so this doesn't come out of nowhere. It's certainly not good news. I mean, if Maeda was feeling great, they would have had him make a start. But it's not totally unexpected. It is funny to me to think of Louie Varland as their Yankee Stadium specialist, this rookie from St. Paul, where they're like, he made his debut there and threw 5 good innings, struck out Aaron Judge, and then
also gave him a home run to Aaron Judge.
Who didn't last year?
Exactly right.
That's
this year.
That's just a badge of honor,
Right.
And then he's coming back to make now what is this? This will be his 6th start, I think, in the majors.
That's right.
So 2 at Yankee Stadium.
Well, I mean, the Twins are also. It's a little bit weird this year in that they just don't have the usual number of off days that you usually see in April. They basically had
they had them right away.
They had them, they had the one right away. I mean, listen, before the day after opening day is always an off day, no matter almost no matter which team you're playing against, right? And then you've got your home opener off day. But then they played like 10 games in a row, and then they immediately after the off day they have on Monday, they're playing 14 games in a row. And you just don't see that kind of leap to full craziness in a Major League Baseball schedule too often. And then after that, May opens up a little bit. They've got a few more off days in May, so maybe you get
one every 10 days or something like that usually. So I'm very curious to see how Varland pitches. I think certainly he's ready. I mean, we've talked about him before, but back-to-back minor league pitcher of the year for them. He looked good pretty consistently in the 5 starts he got down the stretch for them, including the debut at Yankee Stadium. He throws strikes, got a good mid-90s fastball, got a good breaking ball. Question with him is, third pitch, changeup type of thing, but he's been working on that. I think he's an example of their rotation depth, which we talked a lot about Ober being, a 6th quality starter who's vastly overqualified to be at AAA. For most teams, Louie Varland would have been in the opening day rotation too, as 4th or 5th starter. Right. I mean, for that matter, most Twins teams in the past 20 years would have had the AAA minor league pitcher of the year in there.
Yeah, even more so than most major league teams.
Well,
probably.
that's a fair point, too. The Twins especially is how I should have phrased that. So he's 7th on the depth chart. And I know people were like, well, why not Ober to get this start? But Ober started Wednesday at AAA, threw 6 shutout innings, I think 67 pitches, I want to say. And I think it's pretty clear by the timing, Ober is first in line and can be called up and sent back down just as Varland can be. But I'm assuming this suggests that they weren't sure what the plan was going to be for Maeda until they gave Maeda 2 or 3 days post-start and possibly had him throw a bullpen session to get a sense of, are you fatigued? Do you feel great? Is your elbow sore?
How's the velocity? How's the spin rate? Like, let's measure some things and see how we feel about that.
It's not until Ober had already pitched at AAA by the time they probably came to the conclusion that, hey, let's put Maui back 1, skip Maeda, and then Varland, who was scheduled to start Thursday, having him start Friday is a little more doable. Once Ober takes the mound Wednesday at St. Paul or for St. Paul, he's not going to be available at any point during this Yankees series, so you couldn't accomplish the same thing. Now, could you have planned in advance? Yeah, but I mean, you are dealing with humans here. You can't just you could have just said, no matter what happens to Maeda, he's going to make 2 starts and then he's going to skip his 3rd start.
Sure.
In which case, it could have been Ober. But I think they wanted to actually see how Maeda felt and react to that, which makes perfect sense. Right. Before we get into Kepler, Gallo, some other injury stuff, some updates on Polanco and Kirilloff, let's talk about next couple sponsors, including this is a new one. Pay attention to this one because this is a fun one. Our friend and former multi-time guest, Do-Hyung Park, the MLB.com Twins beat writer, 2-time Jeopardy loser, participant, contestant, let's say. Loser, though. Loser. That's a different one. Spelling. He's a genius. He's like the smartest guy I've ever met. But he's also incredibly good at trivia. And so he now has he's still writing about the Twins, but that's like a side gig now. He's transitioned his career into the trivia guru phase, which is only natural for a guy like him. And so he's hosting a trivia event that is for charity that we're about to tell you the details for, which I think is just phenomenal.
It's going to be. I think we're going to have some Twins beat writers there. I think we're going to have some trivia teams, etc.
If only to heckle him.
The group is 826 MSP. It's a nonprofit youth writing center located in South Minneapolis. It serves about 1,300 kids in the Twin Cities every year. And basically, they're trying to amplify the voices, stories, and powers of K-12, Black, Indigenous, and students of color through writing, publishing, and leadership programs. They do everything from student writing into books, writing and literacy tutoring, summer writing workshops, hosting elementary school field trips with cost to no students, and they're having this cool fundraiser that involves trivia, which is it's trivia for cheaters. So you get a team together. Doe's going to be the host, reading the things. And when you don't know the answer, you can cheat, but you have to donate some money.
That's the charity
for
component,
the particular.
which I like this a lot.
I do too. I'm really excited about this.
I like this in other things. Like you could play a baseball game, and if you fall behind by enough runs, you can buy runs. I like that as
that idea
charity component too. But so it's Thursday, May 25th. At, you're going to say this, La
Doña Cerveceria in Minneapolis. It's a craft brewery in just by Penn and Glenwood, kind of.
The Twins are off that night, which is how the beat writers can be there and how Twins fans can be there without missing anything. It's pub-style trivia, sports, movies, books, history, just general stuff. You can make a team up to 5 players. You raise money. Every dollar you raise, the team gets the equivalent of that in cheat cash, which you can kind of trade in for points and all that. They're giving away tickets to United games and Can Wonderland.
And if
Twins game,
if you go sign up, here's the best part.
I like this. Yeah, our listeners, when you sign up, you can enter the code Gleeman. One of the most renowned cheaters there is, Gleeman, when registering, and your team will get a bonus of $250 in cheat cash. Now, that's not real money, but it's tradable for points.
Right.
To learn more and to sign up for your team, go to 826msp.org. That's 826msp.org, and click on the tab for trivia for cheaters.
Yeah, that's right.
Support that. Heckle dough. Cash in my cheating reputation for extra cash. What more can you need? Also,
HelloFresh.
Yeah, HelloFresh.
We got to talk about this because Chrissy recently had surgery. She doesn't want to go to the grocery store.
Yeah.
I'm having surgery Wednesday and Thursday.
Yeah,
I don't want to go to the grocery store. Guess what we got coming Wednesday?
HelloFresh. Here's how HelloFresh works. Right. They send you all the ingredients. First of all, they have new menus every week, and they have like meat eater menus, vegetarian menus, family menus, which is stuff that kids might like. Yeah. They have all kinds of stuff. Whatever you need. You go there, you pick what you want. You can look it over. You can look at pictures. You can choose. They'll send you all the ingredients, pre-portioned, fresh ingredients right to your house, along with step-by-step instructions. And the reason I say instructions, it is a recipe, but it also has like pictures. And like literally, number 4, do this. Here's what ginger looks like. Do that. So if you're a good cook, you can just cook this good meal and enjoy it.
Right.
If you're an idiot like me who can't cook anything, you can still use this to produce a good meal that looks good and you can feel proud of. And HelloFresh, here's the deal they have. It's I believe it's America's #1 meal kit. Here's the deal they have. You go to HelloFresh.com/Gleeman50 and use the promo code Gleeman50. And the reason it's 50 is you get 50% off, 50% off, plus your first box ships completely free. So that's HelloFresh.com/Gleeman50. Use the promo code 50 and you get 50% off. Okay. Let me just make sure we hit all these bullet points because I spend upwards of 6 to 7 minutes putting these together.
You're very concerned with your list today. I can see that.
It's a long list.
It's a lot to talk about.
There is a lot to talk about. All right. So we talked about Kepler, Gallo. I mean, these are both, I would describe as precautionary IL stints. Kepler, I would say in general, the last couple years has kind of taken the approach of, especially April, May, let's be pretty careful here. If I tweak this, tweak that, could I sit for 5 more days and be good to go? And that's always the question. We talked a lot about that on the Patreon, the idea of why are they not placing these guys on the injured list sooner? If you want a breakdown of that, we discussed that for like 15 minutes on the Patreon show the other day. Gallo, it's funny you can read into this of like, well, it allowed him to not go to Yankee Stadium where he was about to get booed by 50,000 people. But I will say this, like I'm sure people have read into that because he said basically, I feel good.
Right.
They're sending him out on a rehab assignment to join the Saints so he can kind of get some live at-bats. It's an uncommon timeline for a very short-term injury, and so it creates a situation where you're trying to read between the lines. I will say this about Gallo. Yes, he ends up skipping the Yankee Stadium trip, which he would have been booed mercilessly. But we asked him about that 3-4 days ago in the clubhouse. And I thought his answer, now who knows how he's really feeling about it, but his answer, which seemed pretty genuine to me, was, oh yeah, I'm very curious to see if I get booed more than Carlos at Yankee Stadium. And he kind of said, look, it's not going to be fun to get booed by 50,000 people in a spot where I really would have loved to perform better.
Right.
But he kind of said, how many people going to have this life experience?
Right.
I get to go home and continue my life afterward. It might not be the most fun. And he was hoping to, be on the roster and come through with a hit.
It's not like he wasn't prepared for it, mentally prepared for it. Right.
But, he ends up missing that series. He's going to be eligible to come back shortly after Kepler is eligible to come back, basically this upcoming week. We'll see if that happens. I mean, if they're able to add Kepler and Gallo back to this lineup at the expense, probably, like we said, of Wallner and then either Garlick or, I don't even know. I'm guessing Garlick. Right. It shouldn't be Julien, but who knows?
Yeah, who knows?
If Julien goes 0 for 15 in the next 5 games,
who knows?
Things could change. But that could really change. This seems odd to talk about the lineup struggling after they scored 9 runs in the first inning. But, that can change the face of this lineup, particularly in terms of left-handed hitters, which is where they've been lacking for the most part. I mean, Vasquez is hitting well. He's at bottom of the order righty. Michael A. Taylor all of a sudden is hitting for power at the very bottom of the lineup, but you're going to have, the Correa, Buxton, Miranda is pretty much going to ensure that you have some good right-handed hitters no matter what, but they've kind of struggled this year to find Who leads off as a lefty? Maybe that's Julien. But who bats third or fourth? Well, that's been Larnach. But after a hot start, he's cooled down a little bit. Who's batting kind of in that 5 to 7 range as a lefty? Well, it was Gallo briefly. It could be Kepler potentially. It could be Gordon, except he's started slow. So those two bats, or at least one of those two bats, getting back soon.
It's somewhat rare to see a 9-4 team be 12th overall in the American League in runs scored.
Yeah,
like that. It's easy to kind of overlook the offensive problems or what's been going on.
And they've had some big games in that, too.
Yeah, right.
Which really tells you how many games they've had nothing.
Right.
Like, they've already scored 11 yesterday. They had an 8-run game. I think they had another double-digit game in there, too. So, yeah, it's been very hit or miss, boom or bust, which was the case last year also. I mean, their lineup, now, it completely fell apart in September, but through August, I think they had like a top 6 lineup, but it was so all or nothing. It was 8
overall,
runs
I think they're basically middle of the road, middle of the road offenses overall, even after the tough September. Right.
And then in addition to that, Polanco and Kirilloff continue to rehab together at Low A Fort Myers.
Yep.
Kirilloff homered to the opposite field last night.
Well, that's good.
Polanco had another hit. Polanco has now played either 4 or 5 rehab games, and Kirilloff has played 2. They've been basically one day on, one day off. The next question I think probably is, when does Polanco move to St. Paul to kind of put the finishing touches on a rehab assignment where you start to really focus on performance as opposed to just reps?
Right. I wouldn't be shocked if they both go together sometime next week. St. Paul's back in town.
I'll be surprised if they go together. But, I mean, here's the thing. A rehab assignment for a hitter is 20 days maximum, unless you reset it with a new injury or something. Kirilloff's already 5 days in. So, I mean, yeah, I don't think they're going to both get sent to AAA Monday. It might be Polanco, but he can't be that far behind him, really, like just mathematically, which is why it was a little bit of a surprise that they started Kirilloff's rehab assignment this week. I was kind of expecting it to be maybe a week or two further away than that. But, I mean, it's a good sign, as is obviously hitting a home run.
Especially the opposite field.
Yeah, with Polanco, I don't know. A couple people who saw him have been watching him in Fort Myers. He's been playing second base every game for 6 innings, 7 innings. He's not moving real well at second base. He's hitting, and base running wise, he's been fine. But either because he's being cautious with his knee, or he's just still not 100%. Right, he's not moving great. So obviously that's a factor. I mean, there's no room for him as a DH. If he's just coming back for his bat. So he needs to be able to feel his position.
Unless they decide they're going to start moving Buxton.
That ain't happening. In my opinion. Not anytime soon, I mean. So yeah, that's kind of the next, first wave is going to be Kepler, then probably Gallo, then assuming things continue to go relatively well, then Polanco, and then Kirilloff. Now, it's all going to be within the next 2 weeks, basically. Or at least there's going to be decisions made on some of this stuff.
Right.
So, I mean, the lineup in 2 weeks now, 2 weeks from now, who knows who's going to be injured? Who knows what's going to be happening? But their lineup is about to look a lot different. I mean, it already does look different than it was 5 days ago because they've added Julien to it. But the lineup potentially, especially among left-handed hitters, because all 4 of those guys we just talked about, plus Julien, so 5, those are all left-handed or switch hitters.
Right.
So, yeah, yes, the lineup has started slow. And yes, all of those guys have big question marks from a health and production standpoint. But
Kirilloff certainly has
on paper,
options. They can keep him in AAA if they want to, right?
Yeah, although they could use a first baseman at this point. A left-handed hitting first baseman.
You got Gallo back.
Yeah, that's true. Although your guy Donnie Barrels has been he's hitting like 350.
Yeah,
and he made one bad play at first base, but he's looked pretty decent at first base.
Bad plays at first base.
By the way, they're unsung, I'll call them, hitters. Now Farmer's out, so we can't talk about him for a while. But Vasquez had a huge game and is hitting like 380, and has been praised endlessly by pitchers. I mean, you have to give him some level of credit for a pitching staff that ranks, top 3 in the league at this point. That's what he's brought in for.
And he has been hitting. I mean, he didn't just heat up recently. He's just been hitting. Right. So does Jeffers, for that matter.
Yeah, Jeffers and Michael A. Taylor has been showing power that I never expected to see out the bottom of the lineup.
Right.
Although I looked, I believe he has a 17-0 strikeout to walk ratio at this
19.
point. 19-0? Okay. I didn't give him enough credit there.
Yeah.
But who cares? If you're
Right.
popping a homer every
Right.
series, it's fine.
Well, he did not
And then
look good the
Solano-
first week and a half, and now suddenly he's just. Now he's hitting the
He's
side on the ball every
he
day.
seems to be a very kind of I don't know if he's guessing fastball breaking ball in a lot of this, but like he goes from looking very bad on swings to hitting homers.
Right, yeah.
Like his swing it's not a real controlled approach at the plate. And that's fine. That's stylistically that's how he is. He's
Right.
bottom of the order hitter and ever. But yeah, he's come up with some big hits here. And then Solano as a mid-spring $2 million signing.
Yeah.
Where I was at a brewery with all the other beat writers
Right.
when that news broke. You were there.
Yep.
And we were all looking around going, well, where's he even going to play? Like, what is
Right.
his role? And now he's been playing every day and he's hitting 350 and he's coming up with clutch hits. He reminds me so much of, I know the comp is always going to be to Arise just as a little guy who hits singles, but there's almost Astudillo. He's a much better hitter and player than Astudillo, but there's almost a feel. Yeah. I felt so often watching Astudillo, especially that first year when it was going well for him when he first got called up and kind of became a cult favorite, but his swings at the point of contact, no one had any sense which direction the ball was going off his bat a lot of the times.
Yes.
And I kind of get that feeling with Solano too. Like some hitters, like Arise, you can tell they're kind of trying to serve the ball to the opposite field.
Sure.
Or certainly with pull hitters, they're gearing up for a big swing. As they're swinging, you go, oh, this ball's going to right. Or this
Right.
ball. Solano takes like the same swing every time. And half the time the ball goes to right, and half the time the ball goes to left. And there seems to be no rhyme or reason to it in terms of the trajectory of the ball off the
I
bat.
suppose there's some advantage to being
Yes.
able like that too. Like
Yes.
it does freeze the fielders for
Yes.
an extra step.
And
or
how do
two.
you play him when, he's capable of pulling the ball. He's got a couple hits past shortstop into that hole. And then other times he just dumps it down the right field line for a single. I mean, he was billed as the Donnie Barrels. It's like
Right, yeah.
he just hits he just hits singles everywhere. And
Right.
without him, I literally don't know who'd be playing first base for them at this point. I mean, he's been playing a lot against
Yeah,
lefties
that's
and
true.
righties.
Tyler White, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I don't
Right,
know.
right,
Like
right.
maybe they move someone over. I do think with
Maybe Nick Gordon.
that would be a funny. Yeah, I mean, I honestly, you might be seeing Vasquez or something a little bit at first base. He played some first with the Red Sox. One other note on that with Julien played exclusively second for the Saints the first week or so, and then even going back to last year at Double-A, 98% of his playing time was at second base.
He didn't play first base at all
Right.
last year.
For Wichita.
Last time he played first base was like 2021 for like 4 games.
Right.
Yeah.
I asked him about that and said, what positions are you kind of prepared to play? And he said, well, I'll play anywhere.
Right, of course.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
But I was like, well, have you gotten reps at first? Because I've noticed you haven't been playing first. And he said, oh, yeah, pregame, off days, I play a lot of first. Like I've been getting a lot of ground balls at first. I've been working at first, which is logical. That's, I actually think he's probably more likely long-term to be a first base DH bat than a starting second baseman.
Yep,
I mean,
agree.
it might be kind of an Arise situation where he plays a lot of first and DH, and then occasionally they'll throw him out at second on a day where they just want the bat in the lineup.
Right.
But Baldelli, I also asked about that. He's starting at second now, but are you going to work him into the first base mix? And Baldelli kind of said, I need to see more from him at first before we stick him out there in a game at first. But to your point, a week from now, they're going to have Gallo back, and a week and a half from now or 2 weeks from now, they might have Kirilloff back. In which case, I don't know what
but a week from now, they might have Polanco
right,
back.
this is sort of my
Right,
point.
yeah,
It's
right,
like, I don't know, because if Polanco's back, he's going to be playing second, in part because he can't be the DH because Buxton's the DH. Now, on the 1 day a week Buxton takes off or whatever,
Sure.
3 days, whoever, somebody's going to DH. But I just mean, in terms of mapping out what is their regular lineup now, I don't know. There's going to be a point fairly soon where Julian's performance is going to have to keep him here because it's not going to be super straightforward from a roster standpoint to keep him. Like if Polanco's back and Gallo's back, let alone those two plus Kirilloff and plus Kepler, there isn't necessarily room anywhere for Julien. Now, I would argue if he's hitting at all like we think he's capable of, you can find playing time for him at the expense of Nick Gordon, at the expense of Max Kepler, at the expense of, for that matter, Polanco might need a day or two off.
I mean, if he establishes himself as one of the 4 guys you really want in that lineup, right? Don't worry about the fielding.
Right.
Listen, what we want is 4 or 5 really good bats in this lineup.
Yeah.
Polanco is supposedly one of those bats, so he's not bumping Polanco, right? But everybody else who's not one of those top 4 or 5 bats, and those top 4 or 5 bats are Buxton, Correa, him, maybe Miranda, right? Maybe Larnach, depending if he comes through. Anybody else is fair game.
I agree,
right?
And it's also
except a catcher,
right? It's also funny, like my feeling on these young guys. Like if I'm trying to think of the example, but I remember years ago there was some twin who was called up, some rookie. And like by his 3rd game, he was hitting like 3rd or 4th in the lineup, and then a week later they sent him down. And I remember thinking at the time, we probably talked about it on the show. I can't remember who it was, but I remember thinking, well, that to me is illogical. Right. Those 2 facts,
right? Which
is if this applies to Julien in the leadoff spot, which is I suspect now for the next week we're going to see Julien in the leadoff spot.
Yeah.
If you feel good about him in the leadoff spot, he ought to be on the team.
I'll be interested to see the lineup today.
Yeah.
Versus the lefty, if will he still be leading off.
Well, I bet he doesn't play against the lefty, but he could. They'll drop him. I bet he either doesn't play or he bats low. But I'm saying against righties, he's going to be your leadoff man for a little while here. Mm-hmm. And my argument would be, well, if that's the case, if you look at your current 13 position players against a right-hand pitcher and you say, this rookie, Julien, should be batting first in the lineup, well, then no matter how crowded the picture gets over the next 2 weeks, that suggests to me you have pretty good deal of confidence in him relative to some of those other guys. And Baldelli praises his bat to no end, and not just, this guy can hit, but like the quality of the at bat. I mean, it's not, he's always full of praise for young players. And he's not going to, it's not a Tom Kelly vibe from Rocco Baldelli. Right. You'd ask Tom Kelly about like Todd Walker or somebody, he'd be like, the guy sucks. I don't know why he's here. We'll see. And it's like, wow, okay. And but I've, in the 3 or 4 years I've been around the team, and he's had some good young hitters come up, certainly. This is the most I've seen him praise kind of above and beyond the normal thing. But does that mean anything if the roster is at 100% capacity in terms of healthy guys coming back, and all of them are left-handed bats? Right. Also this is Cart so far ahead.
Yeah, of the horse. We talk about about getting way too.
What are the odds? Yeah. A, all those guys come back healthy, and B, by the time even if they do come back healthy, there aren't 2 or 3 other guys who are injured. So, but it's a nice problem to have. It was a great first kind of breakout game for Julien. And I do like the idea of kind of showing fans, here's a glimpse of what could be happening. This is why everybody's been writing about him and talking about him and all this stuff. So,
speaking of getting healthy, let's talk about our last sponsor, BetterHelp. I think one of the things we talk about a lot about getting healthy physically, but there's also a mental health aspect that if you are ready to start taking care of yourself that way, if you are looking for therapy, you're looking for a therapist, you've made that decision, and that can be a difficult decision to make. The last thing you want are a whole bunch of obstacles in the way of actually following through on that urge. And that's where BetterHelp comes in.
BetterHelp can make it very easy. If you want to do a video chat with a licensed therapist, you can set that up. Yes. If you say, I don't really want to be on video, you can do a phone call. Right. If you say, I don't even want to do a phone call, you can do a live chat where you're just typing. They can tailor it to whatever your specific comfort level is, and they have real licensed therapists ready to go, and they can help you much more quickly than it often takes to do this in person.
All you have to do is just fill out a brief questionnaire, and you'll get matched up with a licensed therapist. Or if you want to switch therapists at any time for no additional charge, you can do that.
So you can discover your potential with BetterHelp. Just visit BetterHelp.com/Gleeman. You get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/Gleeman. Okay. Let's see what else we got here. I would like Garlick to stay on the team. I do think that's a role.
I haven't looked at how many lefties we got. We got one coming up in Boston, right?
Yeah, one in New York. I don't know, because I think Sale got switched, so I don't even know if they're facing a lefty. They're not. They just haven't faced the lefties, and it doesn't look like they're going to face a ton of lefties. So He has an.
We should mention he's now on the 40-man roster, so they can move him back and forth as much as they want to. Right.
Left, so I suspect that's probably what's going to happen. We mentioned, let's see, Correa back from, what was it? Did he miss 4 games? 3 games? 4 games, I want to say. With
I think 4.
Back injury.
Yeah,
strained back.
because it started Sunday. Yep.
His ability to play now 6 days a week, let's say, is pretty key with Farmer out indefinitely.
Right.
We talked so much about depth all offseason, and one of the biggest kind of comfort levels was having Farmer, who has spent the last 2 years as Cincinnati's primary starting shortstop, as a backup shortstop to Correa, who himself is one of the best shortstops in baseball. You were feeling so good about that. Like, we literally have an all-star starter and a capable starter in the backup role.
Right.
Well, now Farmer's out indefinitely through no fault of his own, obviously. Let's hope that goes well for him. Let's hope in a few weeks there's some meaningful updates on him and he's at least can kind of start the path back to the majors. But that's, secondary. His ability to play is secondary to just getting his, face right and health right,
yeah,
obviously.
Right.
But so they do need Correa to be playing, pretty much every day at this point. You're going to see Willie Castro or Gordon filling in for him. Solano's played some shortstop, but I'd be surprised by that.
No way.
Obviously, Polanco has played some shortstop, but I'd be pretty surprised if you saw him at shortstop at any point, too, based on the bad knee and the fact that he hasn't played there in a couple of years. So,
and since you're losing Farmer too, you're also losing him versus a left-hander tonight
as a right-handed bat.
And suddenly that means I think you're going to have to see at least 2 left-handed bats in that lineup someplace.
Yeah, well, they could do.
You got Miranda.
Castro can basically.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about Castro.
Now, Willie Castro's a switch hitter.
Yeah.
He doesn't really knock around lefties the way that Farmer does. He's just a right-handed bat, which is okay. Right. That's just has value in itself.
He plays second base over Julien or Nick Gordon.
Yeah, I'm assuming that's what's going to happen. We'll see. Let's see. There was one other. Oh, Buxton. We talk about all these injuries. When I saw Buxton collide with
what was he
the
doing?
Second baseman. See, you know what's funny? I heard that reaction from everyone. All the players on both sides, because I saw quotes from the White Sox from our White Sox writer, James Fegan got them. They all thought that the ump screwed it up and that there was nowhere for Buxton to go unless he literally just stopped.
Yeah.
And if you watch the ump was on his right.
Right.
Because the ump was didn't.
Yeah, honestly, I don't really know what the rules on it. But here's the thing. In terms of that second baseman who's completely focusing on the ground ball and moving into that path, and Buxton has it all in front of him. Buxton can see what's going on there. You're probably right. He could have.
What could he have done other than stop?
Other than stop or try to go behind the runner.
Go behind because the ump, if you watch, is peeling off to the right. He could have run into the ump pretty easily, and I don't know where the ump was supposed to be and how he was supposed to move and all that.
So was he trying to hurdle the guy? What was he doing?
He was trying to get to second base. That was the point Baldelli said, which is unless you just want him to stop and concede an out.
Right.
And he said, guess what? Byron is not going to concede an out.
Yeah, right. Buxton is not afraid of contact. That much we have established.
He should be, probably.
Right.
But when I saw him hit, I don't know. Everyone loves.
He's got a football mentality on a baseball player's body, right?
Everyone loves to assign blame for everything, and maybe there's someone more to blame than not. But I think that was just an example of just a effed up play where everyone's motivation on that play collided. Basically,
right.
Buxton is just trying to hustle to second so that there's not either a force out or a double play or whatever. The umpire is veering off to the side so that Buxton couldn't even go to the right, and then. Not only was the second baseman in the path, obviously, to get the ball, but he was charging in on the ball.
Yeah.
Well, it's easy to look at that and go, well, they should have avoided each other. But these are not really decisions that are made. This is just running. And so when I saw Buxton hit sort of hip to body with the second baseman and then flip and land on his head and then stay down as if he'd been shot, I thought, well, great. They've just lost Kyle Farmer to a brutally bad pitch to the face. Everyone's freaked out about that already. Now Buxton, who is perpetually injured, has just died. I don't know. Like you look at him and you're just like, that could be a torn hip.
Right.
That could be a torn ACL. That could be 18 concussions. Like I'm looking at him, I'm like, I don't know. That could be anything. And he certainly seemed dazed. He kept like dabbing his lip as he came off. And I thought, well, maybe he just hit his face.
Yeah.
And then afterward, a few things. Baldelli was asked about it and said, we don't really have an update on him. And it happened 90 minutes ago or whatever. He was hit everywhere. So we're just like checking like we're giving him like when you take your car into the shop and you just go give it the whole list.
Yeah.
Like check the oil, check the transmission, check the tires, check the whatever.
Right.
And so it's like, well, we got to check him for a concussion. He's got a busted lip. His hip might be sore, which he's had hip problems. His knee, which is the biggest concern always.
Right.
And so there were two good signs, I think, in the moment, which is one, Baldelli said, oh, he'll be on the flight to New York. I don't know how he's going to feel tomorrow morning in New York when he wakes up, but he'll be on the flight to New York, which is always a good sign. And then I saw Buxton, maybe 20 minutes after the final pitch, playing with the various kids of Twins who were often there outside the clubhouse.
Sure.
Luisa Baldelli, Rocco's kid, and Buxton were kind of, playing peekaboo. And I thought, and Buxton's like kneeled down playing. He's got a wrap on his arm or whatever. And I thought, if he's really in rough shape, probably he's not thinking to himself, what I'd like to do right now is go across the hall and be in the same room with some screaming children.
Sure.
And B, not that Luisa Baldelli is not lovely and well-behaved. She is. She's very well-behaved. But B, the training staff is not going to let him do that with a concussion or what they fear is a concussion. And certainly if he tore his hip or did anything. So I walked, and he also talked to Dan briefly after and basically said, we'll see how sore I am in the morning, but I feel okay. Even given all that, I would have bet any amount of money he would not have played last night at Yankee Stadium. Just the way, day off at the very least. Like, let's just make sure. The fact that he was in the lineup, played well, drew a couple of walks, kept the line moving in that first inning.
Right.
Is a pretty good sign. Now we'll see today and tomorrow and the next day and all that. But yeah, that was, I really thought we had witnessed a negative turning point of the Twins season as he ran into the second baseman there.
Yeah.
I really thought, like as ugly as that game already was,
Right.
I thought, Buxton's done for months. And it was kind of similar to Boston last year when he slid into second and appeared to injure his knee. And we thought, well, he's going to be out for the rest of the season. He just tore his ACL. Right. What we didn't know at that time, and we learned in the months to come, was he was already injured. His knee was already injured.
Yes.
That was him tweaking an injured knee and kind of freaking out about it a little bit.
Yes.
So yeah, this is, with Buxton, with all injured players, but with Buxton especially, it takes so little to get like your spidey sense going
to immediately dwell on the worst case scenario.
Like I have gotten into the practice of literally watching him, if he like grounds out to shortstop, watching him run to first, watching how he crosses the bag, and then I'll watch him veer off into the dugout. Right. I've gotten to the point where I'll watch, does he give a high five to someone in the dugout? Does he have a brief conversation with, Tommy Watkins or the trainer? Like, because there's just so many cases of, is he hurt? And certainly when he's lying face down off second base, you're
after one of the weirdest baseball collisions I've ever seen.
So they've avoided something there at least. Let's see. One other thing.
Well, the other thing about him coming back so fast is that the one thing you are seeing, I think we're seeing more and more of, and I don't know if this is an organizational philosophy that's going this direction, or if it's being led by Baldelli, or if it's being led by Paparesta, is let's just give everybody a little bit extra rest.
Right.
Let's give a little bit extra.
That's been the case for years.
I'm not talking about like a day off here and there, like which has been the thing. I'm talking about like let's just not rush anybody back, which is just so. I agree. I think it's been sort of something that we've seen develop over the last 4 or 5 years through the Falvey regime.
Yeah.
But for those of us who've been podcasting or writing about the team for 20 years,
you've been doing this 20 years?
Comparing that to the previous regimes, rub some dirt on it and get out there and play hurt.
Now, has this version
culture, and I'm not even saying it was necessarily something that they were saying to people, it was just part of the culture to see that sort of gradual cultural shift here.
The biggest change you can make, I think, from a sort of health and rest standpoint as an organization is not to tell guys whether they're going to play or not. I mean, that's key, obviously, what you're talking about. But the biggest thing is to get across the number one point, which is we are not viewing it as a good thing
Right.
if you try to play hurt.
Right.
And like you said, there was I'll forever use Nick Punto as an example. Nick Punto got hurt hamstring like in July. By the way, Nick Punto was like the 8th best hitter in the Twins lineup at that point. It's not like he was an essential piece.
Right.
Played every day for the next 3 months, hit like 165 down the stretch.
Right.
And then the day after the season said, I've been playing with like a torn hamstring for 3 months.
Right.
And then people will be like, Terry Ryan or Gardner, like, what the hell's happening? Why was that? And they're like, whoa, hey, he's a tough guy. He played through it. And I just remember like screaming at the like on the inside and probably on the podcast at the time.
Right.
To who is that benefiting?
Right.
And I think that is the biggest change. Is now can it go too far?
Sure.
Or does it?
I think we're so far from too far.
Right.
I mean,
my thing is like, have the results been any better than the previous regime? Not necessarily, but you can do all the right things with injuries, and you can be preventative, and guys will still get hurt. Like it's a make or miss league. Like in the NBA, you can get all the open corner 3-pointers you want and run a beautiful offense to get these guys wide open. But if
somebody's got to make it,
if someone's just going to brick it from if someone's just going to get hurt, they're going to get hurt. So, yeah, I agree that they've been.
I take a look at this year where you had Polanco and Kirilov not hurrying. I mean, not hurt, but not being forced into or forcing themselves into the opening day lineup. Where we're going to have a little bit extra time here. We're going to have a little bit extra time there, right?
I mean, Polanco got hurt. He re-hurt himself.
Well, okay.
Spring. But yes.
You got also Gallo and Kepler, who both seem to be kind of annoyed, frankly, that they've got to be on the injured list. Huh?
Kepler put himself on the IL, basically.
Well, yeah.
Same thing he did last year.
But the point is he was kind of like, I think I could play up till the point where he can't decelerate on the
You're
the
describing,
day.
I believe, the opposite of what happened.
You think
I think that's what happened with Gallo.
Okay.
Definitely.
Okay.
Kepler is not pushing through these things. I mean, I think it's very clear. He said that to us. He said, especially early in the season, I don't want this to get worse. And so I'm willing to go on the IL. And they thought he was going to be available the next day, maybe, when he hurt his knee initially. That's why they didn't put him on the IL. And I'm not saying he's telling them, I'm going on the IL. I'm not accusing him of it. But I think he's being cautious with it, which is understandable to me. But if you look at this was I believe his 6th injured list stint since 2020, so 3+ years. Most of them have been of this variety, which is a day-to-day type of injury or a week's injury that he goes on the IL for, and then he takes a while to come back. And I'm not saying anything morally wrong with it, but I'm saying I don't think this was with Kepler. I don't think it's the Twins pushing him to stay out.
Yeah, okay.
I think now maybe they're working in tandem and they're in agreement on this, but I think with Gallo that's probably the case. What you're describing,
Okay.
I think Gallo, at least from what he said, he's ready to play, and they were like, "Look, you haven't hit for 4 days. Let's shut you down. You can come back in 8 days anyway. Go to AAA, have some at bats. You missed the Yankee Stadium trip, all that." With Kepler, I think it's. I don't want to say they're in disagreement, but I think it's more Kepler and his representatives probably being like,
Well, we got
I don't
that
want
sense,
to chance this.
We got that sense last year as well about Kepler.
I just think
but
that's
Kepler
how
wasn't being put on the IL. He was still on the roster, but not necessarily playing.
Right. Every day we would say, what's with Kepler? Another day. He needs another day.
This way it's, he's just out and he's going to rest. Right.
Right.
And then
again, I'm not saying
you've
that-
got Buxton as well. Buxton, who's clearly, doesn't want to play DH full time. Right. But in that position as well. It just feels like that is yet one more representation of the steps that the team as a whole is working on towards changing that culture. And I wonder if that's just the natural path that they've kind of been walking, or if the Paparesta thing actually is playing into it.
I don't know that I'd have to look more into it, but I don't know that he was known. He was in Oakland a long time as their head trainer, for some very good A's teams. They had good results in terms of keeping guys healthy, just in general. And he won like Major League Trainer of the Year a couple times. But I don't know that they were known in Oakland as like a very rest heavy or preventative type of thing. It's possible. I mean, he's certainly part of the reason they hired him was so that he could sort of mold the culture around this thing how he wanted it, as opposed to last year just became sort of a cluster.
Right.
Here was a thing. Baldelli was asked a couple days ago pregame about the perception that like guys are just getting random days off, Buxton, Correa, that sort of thing. And so was his quote. He said, quote, "We're not just handing guys days off so they can relax and chill out. That's not what the days off are. These guys are off for a reason. And if they were completely able and feeling good, they'd be playing." And that he's made a similar point about Buxton regarding center field.
Okay.
Which is, if Buck could go out there and play center field, he'd be playing center field. Now, Byron might tell you he can go out there and play center field. And obviously this is not a fact. Like, it's not something that can be definitively proven. Can Byron Buxton play center field and be, 6 days a week?
Right.
But the reason
can his body hold up to it?
Well, right.
Which
That's
is
also
another
the
point
thing.
of it. Not just,
But I think that's kind of how they feel about a lot of things. Is like people just assume that, first of all, Baldelli is not making these decisions. Like, Baldelli is not deciding who goes on the IL.
Right.
I know Doc Rock and Royce's tweeting about all this stuff. Like, this organization, this is a multi-billion-dollar organization with an entire medical staff. Right. In addition to an entire training staff. I mean, all respect to Rocco Baldelli, but he didn't go to college. Like, I'm by the way, I'm a dropout of college. I'm not crapping on that, but I'm saying they're not letting him make medical decisions on any level.
Right.
And, it's part of his job to interact with players and to have a sense of, who's healthy and who's not. And I have no doubt that he's, one of the main points of contact to go
he's
up.
Probably the one who has to say to those players.
Well, that's why it comes across as him making the decisions.
Right.
Because he's the one telling guys, we're sitting you today.
Right.
And he's the one calling guys into the office and saying you're going on the IL and all that stuff. So he's the point of contact for this thing. But if you think Rocco Baldelli, on top of his actual managerial job, is the one saying, Max Kepler's not playing today, or, Carlos Correa's taking a 5th day off as a day-to-day back, those are not decisions being made by Rocco Baldelli, nor should they be. And I think that's one of the weird perceptions that has gotten here, as if Baldelli comes to the clubhouse every morning and everybody's fully healthy and he looks around and he goes, you know what, you're sitting today. Yeah, you're healthy enough to play, but I don't feel like playing. It's like, A, why would he do that? He wants his good players in the lineup so that people can't cite his bad record as the reason he's doing a bad job. And also, why in the world would he have that responsibility?
Let's also just point out, the lineup is available to the players the night before. Generally.
Typically, yeah.
Right.
Although sometimes when they can't figure out 9 guys who are healthy, which happened last year, it takes a while. But yeah, I mean, I think
this is a planned piece. He is certainly one of the voices in the room.
Right.
That's talking about this is not being handed down to him from
No,
high.
I'm not saying that.
Right.
I'm just saying
this is just
the reason you hire a trainer and the reason you have a team doctor and the reason you have a front office that is doing, sports science and all that stuff, kinesiology and all that stuff, is so that the manager's not in charge of saying to someone, oh, you say you're good, but you're sitting. And the point that Baldelli also makes in this regard is, if you go up to the majority of players and say, how you feeling today? The answer you're going to get is either a thumbs up or I'm good to go.
Right.
And you have to, part of his job is to learn who's a reliable narrator of their own health and who is not. Right. And he's talked many times, Byron Buxton is the least reliable narrator about Byron Buxton that exists and will ever exist in the world. Right. Because Byron Buxton, you could find him limbless on the side of the road somewhere and say, you think you could lead off tomorrow? And he'd go, oh, hell yeah, I'll be at the ballpark 8 a.m. Yeah. Well, he can't. But he's going to tell you he can.
Sure.
Same way he'd run through a wall if you let him do it.
Yeah.
And so,
or a second baseman.
Attempt to run through a second baseman. But so, yeah, I would say within that, Baldelli's job is to kind of read the room, read the signals, learn who, when they say, I'm good to go, is really good to go.
Right.
Versus who will just always say it, they're good to go.
Right.
And there are some guys that need protecting in that regard. They clearly feel that way about Buxton. There are some guys who protect themselves in that regard, which is kind of this is me speculating again, but kind of how I read the Kepler situation since probably last year, which is he's more the one who's my knee's still kind of hurt. Could I sit for 2 days and then play on a 90% knee? Maybe. But I'd rather take 8 more days off, come back at 100%. Now, people are going to argue about that too. I just feel like we've gotten to the point where, because of how last year went, obviously, but now there's been a ton of injuries again this year, where injuries have just become such a storyline, and no one, there's so much, there's uncertainty in a lot of aspects of baseball, but no more so than with injuries. And people, I mean, look, we're speculating about this stuff. We got a math major and a college dropout here. We're talking about timelines and that's just how fandom goes. That's how, I mean, people look at injuries and timelines and they're trying to break it down. And a lot of this stuff is kind of black box stuff. They're not going to tell you everything about injuries. They're not going to tell you what's going. We can't go back into the trainer's room. That's off limits. And you know, there is points where you're like, is this Paparesta doing this? Is this Baldelli? There's so much uncertainty there that I think the blanks get filled in such negative ways and such speculative ways. It's tricky, and you can try to get as much information as you want and talk about it in this sorts of ways that we're hopefully doing here. But I don't effing know. Some guys want to play through injuries. Some guys never want to play through injuries. Some guys are quick to recover. Some guys aren't. Some guys just get hurt more. Some guys are Iron Man. Like, I don't know.
Some injuries are easy to recover quickly, or you got a real timeline, and some of them it's just a very nebulous. He's got some sort of strain someplace, and it just takes forever to get better. Like Larnach.
Speaking of injuries and bruised egos in this case. Dan Hayes was sitting next to me in the press box for the last White Sox game 2 days ago.
And he dropped another foul ball.
And a foul ball off the bat of Donovan Solano was hit straight back right to us. We're at the far end now, near the radio booth side. And I'm sitting there. Doe wasn't there, so we were a little more spread out than usual.
Okay.
In a normal circumstance, this ball would have essentially landed between me and Doe. But Dan is on my left, Doe is on my right. But because we were more spaced out, Dan stands up, and we can both, like, when I see a foul ball now coming towards the press box, which happens way too often, I don't like it. Since last year, when it exploded my Diet Pepsi all over me and ruined my life, my new approach is anytime a foul ball is anywhere near the vicinity, I close my laptop and on my slidey chair, push myself away from the table and figure, I'm not going to catch this. Let's decrease the chance of it hitting my face or whatever. So I do that in this case. The ball's coming right at me. So I close my laptop, which has more value than me, probably, and I push myself away from the table. And as I'm doing that, I make contact similar to Buxton in that second baseman with Dan Hayes, who has stood up
and is rushing
towards me to reach over me where he thought I'd be to catch this ball. But instead, I'm moving backwards. So he basically comes in front of me like Kelly Leak from the Bad News Bears, trying to make catches in left field and right field. And I think, well, that's fine, because I wasn't going to really try to catch it. And he hits him right in the hands, like both hands. Bounces up, and then he can't like secure it, and it hits the ground, which is the table. Bounces like 2 more times, and then rolls off. He gets the ball
back out of the press box.
He gets the ball. He gives it to a kid. All this stuff.
Gotcha.
And he's like, "Oh man, I dropped it." And as soon as it happens, I turn to my left and I kind of stick my head out the window towards the TV booth. And I see Dick Bramer in his first game back after COVID. Has about 80% of his body hanging out of the booth, and he's just pointing at Dan, just like maniacally laughing, like a villain in a Die Hard movie laughing. And I say to Dan, "Well, you're going to be on TV." And he goes, "Oh no, you think?" So we put on the MLB TV, and I rewind it a little bit, and they go, Dick Bramer goes, and that one's fouled back by Solano right into the, oh no. Dan Hayes has just dropped hit right to him, folks. I wish I was kidding. The first error of the season for Dan Hayes, blah, blah, blah. And then they immediately go,
we have to have Dan start bringing his glove.
I said that to him. Like Dan Gladden, we make fun of Dan Gladden for bringing his glove. So then Bramer says that, and they show a shot of Dan after missing the catch, just like shaking his head in the press box. But then the graphic for the White Sox defense comes up on the screen, and Morneau goes, let's get to know the White Sox defense. You know, you have Robert, blah, 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 in center field. Then the next ball gets hit to Robert in center field, and Bramer goes, Louie Robert Jr., showing how it's supposed to be done in center field. And then immediately they show a slow motion replay from some faraway center field camera that's been zoomed in now of the ball going into the press box, of Dan standing up, of Dan jumping in front of me, of Dan dropping the ball. And the beauty of it, the true beauty of it is, because I'm wearing a black shirt, you can barely tell if you really zoom in
that you were there,
that I'm even existing in the shot. God. So it just looks like Dan stood up, dropped it, and then just was like wanting to die,
as opposed to saving your life.
And then, at which point Dick Bramer goes, folks, it's like his fingers are taped together. Which goes along with the first time he dropped one, because it's like the third. Dan did catch one last year.
I was at this game, so I missed all of this.
There was the first time, because Bramer loves it.
Yeah, of course.
Any ball that goes into the press box, he's rubbernecking. You know what I mean? He's looking out the window. The first time last year, his bit was, those are the hands of a man who's never done an ounce of manual labor in his life. This gentleman has been typing on a laptop for a living for 20 years. It's no wonder dropped. And then the next time Dan dropped one or didn't catch one, it's like he's got claws for hands, folks. Like, I don't know. Whatever you're imagining, these are not normal hands. I love this as a bit.
Beautiful.
And I'm also just thankful, and Doe should be thankful that he wasn't covering the game. Because what you would have seen on camera if we weren't as spread out is me and Doe just closing our laptops and distancing ourselves. So I give Dan credit for trying to make a play.
Right. Yeah,
every team needs a guy who's going to try. He's the Buxton of this. He's trying to make a play.
He's working for redemption at this point. It's just shoveling deeper and deeper into the hole.
But here's the truth about Dan, and hopefully this has come across on the times he's been on the podcast. And this is why we love Dan. Dan's a tremendous guy. He's a really good writer and reporter. Great guy, too. Dan likes it.
Oh, yeah,
Dan,
of course. Yeah.
He would like to catch the ball.
Right.
But the second best scenario is dropping the ball in hilarious fashion.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
Yes, right.
Because Dan listened to the whole clip of him on Bally being talked about. Dan,
of course.
Our work slack, our bosses, like people running The Athletic are like...
Dan likes giving people a hard time. He likes getting a hard time.
Yes.
Yes, absolutely.
We had bosses last night at The Athletic, or the night before at The Athletic, saying, Dan, you've damaged the brand. Like, we worry that like the stock price is going to go down because of what you've done to The Athletic. And people were like, who wants to write the oral history of the time Dan Hayes dropped a foul ball? Because now we have clips of it. I could get quotes. And then they were coming up with headlines, which is like, never again, why Carlos Correa refuses to talk to Dan Hayes after, that type of thing. So I just wanted to note that. I tweeted out the full, I think it's like a 90-second kind of clips.
God, I'll have to check it out.
Piece together. So yeah, that's something. But now, having said that, I've almost guaranteed now the next home game I'm at, a ball's going to hit my laptop, or it's going to hit my elbow, or it's going to knock up Diet Pepsi over to me, in which case, all the things I've said now, I feel it should be off limits to make fun of me for. I'm just going to give Bramer the no, don't do it signal. By the way,
this is why they don't put me in the front row of the press box anymore. I'd make you guys look foolish.
You probably
it's so easy.
I said maybe we should have like a communal glove that we keep in the front row, but I don't know that you'd have to react pretty quickly.
You have to react pretty quickly.
But Dan Gladden, who's the radio,
he's also not typing during the game.
Well, right,
he can just wear his glove. He's talking.
That's true. Yes. And also, he was a Major League outfielder for 12 years, so that helps too. I last played a position defensively in 1997.
I'm just trying to imagine Dan Hayes typing with one hand and still with the baseball glove on the other. You don't have time to put a baseball glove on during a foul ball.
The last thing I'll say on this is like 3 games before that, I forget which, it was a day game, one of the first games at Target Field of the season. I'm sitting next to Doe. It was whatever day, there were a couple injuries that we were writing about, like in a hurry to get stories out. And I'm sitting next to Doe. Doe's on my right, and we're both head down in the laptop, click-clacking away. All of a sudden, I just hear a thwack. And we both turn, and a ball
had gone
dented the wall behind us, between the two of us. Another foot to the left, and it kills me. Another foot to the right, and it kills Doe.
Right.
And we both looked at each other, and we were like, well, we would have been dead.
Yeah,
like, what were we supposed to do with that?
Right.
Keep your head on a swivel is what you're supposed to do.
Right.
But unfortunately, as a 2-finger typer, I don't really have a great peripheral vision when I'm doing this thing. So, yeah, that's it's the one downside of sitting in the front row.
Yeah.
The upside is people can come by and go, hey, Gleeman. The downside is you may die.
Yeah.
or worse, get made fun of by Dick Bramer on television, which is worse.
That's why I like to
death.
be safe and sit in the Grey Duck deck or upstairs at the Twins pub, someplace safe.
Yeah. That's not.
Talking to Sue the organist.
I wouldn't mind like a.
We were giving Sue the organist a hard time on Wednesday because she definitely is playing the songs at a quicker tempo.
Yeah,
because of the pitch clock.
The pitch clock. That's funny.
Instead of dun dun dun, it's a dun 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 dun. dun. She's got to get at her riff.
That's funny. Like I picture her coming home from work and her arms are sore. She's like, "Oh man, I've been really."
She's like, "You're right. I am."
Do you know what a L screen is in baseball terms?
L screen.
It's the netted screen they put up in front of the batting practice pitcher, so that when line drives get back to him.
Right.
I proposed to PR staff that they put an L screen in front of
you.
Yeah, look. I propose it for everyone. Now, if these other idiots are too manly to do that, I'll gladly be the only one with an L screen in front of me. This is my moneymaker day. You know, this
right.
Not the face, but the mouth.
Well, if you end up with a Kyle Farmer situation, you get
God forbid.
That's
I
right.
feel for him. But okay. So that's it.
We're gonna be doing the podcast with your jaw wired shut. It's not gonna be.
People might,
and you drinking smoothies.
People might like that more.
They might.
I would debate it.
I know I would.
I was on with Barrero yesterday.
Yeah,
and he was talking about, thanks for filling in, and I was saying how hard it is to fill 3.5 hours, and we have a new appreciation for that. And then somehow he says to me, well, what percentage of the time do you think you talk and John talks? And I was like, ooh, that's interesting. I said, I think it started at like 55-45 10 years ago.
That's right.
And it's probably like 65-35 now.
I'd say it's 75-20.
Because I don't shut the F up.
Maybe 80-20.
So, people might be clamoring for me having a busted jaw or whatever. And last thing, to your point about Sue the organist, the Twins, I looked this morning, have played the fastest average games in all of baseball this season. Do you want to guess what the 2 hours and how many minutes do you think?
For the Twins?
Yes, all 13 games. Twins games.
2:22.
Pretty close. 2:27, which is the fastest in baseball. It's like 20 minutes faster than some other teams. Now, they haven't played any like 14-inning games, but they've played a couple extra-inning games so far.
They have. Yep.
So, Sue is having to hustle, to your point.
Well, it helps when you get pitchers going 6-7 innings.
And it helps when the lineup is not hitting.
And I was going to say, when our offense isn't chasing theirs out either.
A lot of innings, a lot of games 2-1, 1-0 type of thing. Okay. That's it.
Patreon will be back on Monday. We will be talking about the Yankees series in its entirety.
Yes.
Both good or bad. Whichever way it goes, we'll be talking about it.
If you're listening to
we'd
this
love
show,
to have you guys join us. If it is a good series, I do think Twins fans overreact. I think they tend to.
What?
Here's what. You
don't even need to finish that sentence.
Yeah, right. Here's what I'll say is that since the team can't win any postseason games until October, right?
We've talked.
This is the closest that people will get to believing one way or the other.
Sure.
If they win 3 out of 4 at Yankee Stadium, I think it sets a very different level of expectations for the fan base on this team. And
definitely.
Unusually important games in that direction.
Well, yeah.
And so if you end up feeling really excited Sunday afternoon about this team, what I would suggest is check out the Patreon on Monday morning. You can just sign up. You can try it for one. You pay $1 for that first one. And then if you don't like it, you can go back or you can hang around for a little bit, listen to the back.
You get the full archive for free.
All ad free. You don't have to hear any of the ads that we do.
Right. All the interviews we've done. And I'll say this. If they now lose 3 consecutive games to the Yankees, you might want to tune in for like a group therapy type of feel. We're good at, believe me, we're good at that.
Right.
We've had a lot more practice with that. All
right. Thanks to BetterHelp and to HelloFresh and to 826MSP. Take a look for that Trivia for Cheaters thing. Soda Stick and Forgotten Star Brewing, their charity week.
Thanks to Dan Hayes for covering up the fact that I was running away from the baseball.
Thanks to Dick Bramer for covering it in its entirety and giving us lots of entertainment.
Can I just tell you, and then I'll shut up and we'll stop. Dick Bramer dropped the ball, hit into the TV booth last year.
Yeah.
Right to him, dropped it. And afterward, I was in the hallway outside, and he comes out, and I say, Dick, boy, you've been throwing a lot of jabs at people for dropping baseballs. How does it feel to drop one? And he shows me his hand, and he says, look, it's all bruised there where the wedding ring is. And he says, it basically hit the wedding ring.
It bounced off the wedding ring.
And it bounced off the wedding
Sure.
ring. And as he's saying that, his lovely wife, who often will come to games and go home,
Right.
take the ride home with him, walks in, and I said, let me get this straight. You're blaming her, really, for you dropping this. And he takes a long look at her, and he goes, yeah, that's about right. So that's what we're dealing with here from a Bramer standpoint of, throwing stones, but not necessarily being able to take any. Okay, goodbye. Bye-bye.